Another example is in Mark chapter 8, where in verses 31 through 33, we read that Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Now, the authenticity of this incident is supported by the criterion of embarrassment, because it's very unlikely that Mark in particular would have invented a saying and attributed to Jesus, in which Jesus called Peter Satan. We've got this double rebuke. Peter rebukes Jesus, and then Jesus rebukes Peter, calling him Satan himself. In Mark, we have very good internal and external evidence, based his material on the eyewitness testimony of the Apostle Peter. And so that's truly significant, and it seems very unlikely that that incident is made up. And there's many other incidents, cases that I could get into as well. But as a cumulative case, we have very good reason to think that Jesus ahead of time predicted his death and resurrection, and thus, if he was not crucified, if he did not die by crucifixion, then he's a false prophet, which would make Islam false. So Aqil's argument is a double-edged sword, I think.
Muslims accept Jesus as a prophet, yet repeatedly Jesus himself spoke of his impending death at the hands of the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem. For example, in Mark chapter 8, verses 31 through 32, "And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." And he was stating the matter openly. Gospel of Mark, considered by many to be the earliest, very clearly, this is Jesus teaching that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected and be killed, and after 3 days rise again.
Regarding Jesus predicting his death, many scholars such as Kurt Aland, in his book The Gospels Were Reconsidered, they doubt that Jesus made these predictions, because in Luke chapter 24, when the women tell the disciples regarding Jesus' body not being there, Peter calls it nonsense. And then when he goes to the tomb, he looks around and then he wonders to himself, what happened? Didn't he know that Jesus had called him Satan for rejecting that he's going to die?
He rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan."
Didn't he know that Jesus had called him Satan for rejecting that he's going to die?
I believe or understand the fact that they were amazed is because they were amazed that someone could come back from the dead. So they said, if he's alive and we thought he died, anyone would be amazed. But the point being, if Jesus prophesied his resurrection, they should not be amazed. And one disciple said that the language was foolish for Mary to even come with this. Like, this is foolish talk. They didn't even believe it. Like, it's nonsense. So if I tell you tomorrow I'll be at your house, and then tomorrow I'm at your house, why would you be surprised? If I told you, I'm going to be there. If Jesus said I'm going to return after I'm killed and resurrect and rise again, why would they be surprised that he's raised? They didn't see the resurrection. There's no actually at all witness for the resurrection itself. They were amazed, according to the story, of a man who's supposed to be dead to be alive. But why would they be if he prophesied about him resurrecting? It doesn't make any sense. Why was Jesus disguising himself? Why didn't the disciples recognize him? He was with the disciples for over half a day, and they didn't know who he was. Mary Magdalene thought he was a gardener. He was disguised as a gardener. Why would she think he was a gardener? Why is Jesus disguising himself? Why is he hiding himself? Why are the companions or the disciples not recognizing who he is? And if he had conquered death, wouldn't it be most fitting for him to go in town and say, listen, you tried to kill me, or you did kill me. I told you I would rise in 3 days, and here I am. He refused to go back into town. Meet me in Galilee. Meet me over here. He refused to go back into the people. Why? Because they didn't kill him, and he's still running for his life. This is why it says they were amazed and they didn't believe it. Because if he prophesied about it, they should have no doubts about believing it, because he told them it would happen.
Jesus prayed to be saved from the cross in the first place. Remember, Dr. White mentioned that Jesus said to his disciples that I will be taken up in Jerusalem, I will be beaten, and I will be killed. So he knew he's already going to be raised from the dead. Yet he prayed to God to be saved from the cross in the first place. In fact, John Calvin actually mentions that this is what Jesus meant. And John Calvin actually starts talking about how could Jesus pray for something that's against God's decree. So since Jesus prayed to be saved from the cross in the first place, and Jesus said in John chapter 11 that God always answers my prayers, then Hebrews 5:7 is a clear-cut tradition that Jesus' prayer was saved. Robert Price mentions in his book, The Shrinking Son of Man, that this could be an early tradition of a passion narrative where Jesus actually survived. Not only that, like Raymond Brown mentions, the wording of Hebrews chapter 5, verse number 7 is based on Psalms 116, which I quoted all the evidence there. It was all there on the slides. Dr. White can't see it. And for every psalm I put there, I put a Christian commentator at the bottom that said this psalm speaking about somebody who comes close to dying but doesn't actually die.
وقولهم إنا قتلنا المسيح عيسى ابن مريم رسول الله وما قتلوه وما صلبوه ولكن شبه لهم وإن الذين اختلفوا فيه لفي شك منه ما لهم به من علم إلا اتباع الظن وما قتلوه يقينا